Another day, another UConn game recap. Let's discuss UConn's 11-point 72-61 victory over Creighton on Saturday, January 25th. The last two games for UConn were very high scoring, the players were hitting most of their shots, and just felt very high energy, and those tend to be the more fun games to watch. The game against Creighton wasn't necessarily slow, it's just that UConn wasn't hitting a lot of their shots. UConn only shot 40% from the field and 20% from three. Also, as we knew coming into this matchup, this was going to be UConn's toughest Big East matchup to date. This Creighton team is a good team. They could very well be top 25 ranked at some point. They're a known threat from three, and the players seem to move really well off ball. So taking that into consideration, and also the primary weaknesses of this UConn team, at least in the Big East, this team was kind of UConn's kryptonite. So the game being this close and this frustrating didn't necessarily come out of left field. Still, some of the differences between this game and Wednesday night's game versus Villanova definitely did give me a little bit of whiplash, and we'll talk about it. Also, just as a disclaimer, I didn't watch this game live. I watched the replay the night of and then into the morning after, and I was online reading various takes about the game before I sat down and watched the replay myself, so it is possible that my perspective is influenced by those first takes that I saw. First of all, on a positive note, I do think I was a little less frustrated watching this game because I kind of knew what to expect, but beyond that, there are some aspects of gameplay or specific players that I might have focused on a little more because I saw people pointing them out, so I looked for it when I was watching. Still, overall, I think a lot of us have similar takeaways from this game and we're thinking about the same things. And one of those things, and where I'm going to start, is UConn's perimeter defense. I saw kind of mixed takes about what people thought about UConn's perimeter defense in this game, and I think that mixed perception is pretty on par with my thoughts. I thought it didn't look the best in the first quarter, looked better in the second quarter, and then the third quarter there were moments where it did look good and moments where it didn't look so great, so a mixed bag for sure. I think there is room to grow for the players in their execution of helping and doubling on defense. There were more than a handful of occasions in this game where, because of a decision to help or double, a UConn player ended up losing the player that they were defending, and then the Creighton player that was cutting or was standing in the corner got a wide open shot. Luckily for UConn, a lot of those shots did not fall, but if there are going to be teams and shooters very soon that UConn is going to encounter where they really can't give them an inch of space, they can't go under screens, and I think it's very important that this is at least addressed and hopefully settled a little bit before then. And this is also why offensive rebounds from UConn's opponents are so damaging, because when UConn's opponent gets an offensive rebound and kicks it out, the player that ends up shooting the three more often than not has several feet of space, and that will really matter in certain matchups. It's pretty interesting because I do feel like all of the main guards that UConn has and plays consistently all are above average to really good defenders, so it's kind of interesting that the perimeter defense is such a prominent weakness of this team. Like, it's something that a lot of people have taken issue with, and we've seen it hurt this UConn team. Like, we've seen it cause them losses. So yeah, I think UConn's matchups in February will probably be the most telling for how this team's perimeter defense has improved from November, December till now. Hoping for good things. As for the team's defense in general, UConn did a good job of pretty much keeping Creighton's two leading scorers in check. I think the big threat for this game was that one of them would go off, and neither of them did. I do think the one thing you can always count on this UConn team for is that they play with great defensive intensity and energy. I think from the first quarter to the second quarter, they definitely picked it up. In that second quarter in particular, UConn was doing a much better job of anticipating passes, getting in passing lanes, and forcing turnovers. The moment in the second quarter where Caitlin got a steal and got a layup in transition, and then on the next possession, Sarah went and did the exact same thing, was pretty cool to witness. AZ, Caitlin, Ashlyn, KK all got 2 steals each, and Sarah Strong by herself had 5 steals and 4 blocks. Moving on from defense and to offense, I just don't think it ever really got going for UConn in this game. Some of it was definitely just that UConn wasn't hitting their shots. Shooting 40% from the field and 20% from three is very different than shooting 60% from the field and 50% from three like they had been doing in the last 2 games. Still, I do think that some of the ways they were running their offense tonight versus in those 2 games definitely differed. Maybe it was just the Gamble energy. Overall, I felt like there was quite a bit of hesitancy and stagnation from UConn in this game. There were quite a few moments where a UConn player would drive into the paint, kick it out, the next player would do the exact same thing, and then the next player would do the exact same thing. That kind of over-penetration is something that I think both fans and the players talk about a lot, and in quite a few of those cases, nothing really opened up from that movement and ended up just running down the clock and making UConn have to force some kind of action and put up a shot. But on a positive note, UConn did a really really good job of keeping their turnovers low in this game. So those were my main takeaways from UConn's offense. And speaking of offensive game, Sarah Strong definitely brought hers to Omaha. This UConn team would have been lost without Sarah Strong in that first half. She recorded an incredibly impressive double-double with 26 points, 12 rebounds, and as I mentioned, to go along with it, 5 steals, 4 blocks, 3 assists, 0 turnovers. Every stat line of hers just sounds unreal. Midway through the second quarter, Sarah Strong had 14 points, and no one else on either team had more than 6. So she was definitely the engine driving this UConn team on offense, especially in the first half. One of the commentators pointed out one of Sarah's shots as a high percentage shot, and at this point, I feel like every shot is a high percentage shot for Sarah Strong. She did miss a few more layups and shots under the basket than usual, especially in that second quarter, but it seemed to be fatigue related. She really was running UConn's offense for that entire first half. I think Sarah does such an excellent job of gesturing and communicating with her teammates about where to get her the ball. Her teammates clearly know her game really well and how to set her up for success. Ice Brady threw an excellent pass over the top of Sarah's defender, and Sarah then had the defender on her back and was able to go up for an easy 2. Sarah's positioning is also just outstanding. This is an incredible season of basketball to witness from a player, let alone a freshman. As I always say, I'm just so impressed by Sarah Strong and her consistency for this team. And speaking of consistent, the next player that I'm going to talk about is KK Arnold, who I think that since mid-December has been one of the most consistent players for this UConn team. She had 6 points and hit a 3, and not only did she hit a 3, but she hit the first 3 of the game for UConn, which every game where KK Arnold is hitting a 3 is a good game in my book. 5 rebounds, which was tied for third most on the team. Also, UConn only out-rebounded Creighton by 1 rebound, which is certainly a problem, but alas, it speaks to really great effort from KK, one of 2 Huskies to get a block to go along with an assist and 2 steals. As the stat line shows, KK Arnold is pretty much everywhere on the court. Whenever I notice that UConn's defensive energy or identity just feels a little off, Gino usually puts KK in the game within 2 minutes or so. He has pretty good timing with that. We pretty much know it's coming. And who better to come in and flip the switch and just create that defensive energy and intensity than KK Arnold. I love seeing her get into her stance and watch her feet move on defense. She really does put such great pressure on the opponents that forces mistakes and turnovers that wouldn't otherwise happen. That one steal that KK got where she went around the girl, poked the ball loose, and got a layup in an and one was just so good. I'm also just continually impressed by how KK has matured and how the game has kind of slowed down for her. In the first quarter, she got her first shot block, but she got the ball back and she calmly bounced past it to a cutting AZ Fudd who got an easy layup. And I think that kind of poise and that ability to readjust is something that's incredibly valuable, especially in a point guard, and it's great to see from KK. I really feel like she deserves her props for her consistency as of late. Next, for Paige Bueckers, this game was definitely a tale of 2 halves, which is both a real strength of a player to be able to turn it on like that, but also obviously less than ideal. She only had 3 points in the first half, and the commentators even pointed out that she was being passive on offense. I think just overall, it would be really hard for this UConn team to have the success that they want to have with only 3 points from Paige in an entire half of basketball, and she probably knows that, which is why she kicked it into a second gear in the second half. She ended the night with 22 points on 9 of 20 shooting from the field, which feels very low for Paige just because of the level of efficiency we're accustomed to from her, but 45% from the field is a very normal shooting percentage, so that definitely speaks to how special of a player Paige is. We also saw a couple incredible passes from Paige in this game. She is often called the quarterback of this team, and for good reason, as we saw, of course, late in the third quarter. She, as the inbounder, passed the ball 3/4 of the length of the court to Sarah Strong to try and beat the buzzer on a layup. It almost went in. I would have gone crazy. It was a really cool moment. So yeah, the quarterback nickname definitely rings true with Paige. Related to that, I would love to see her play point guard more, but we know how I feel about that. Now we're getting into the quicker player takeaways. Caitlin Chen finished 4 of 12 from the field and 0 of 6 from 3. Personally, I'm never really all that fussed about an off shooting night. I understand that Caitlin's shot hasn't been super consistent this season, but I would rather have her take the shots than not, because there was a stretch where she was pretty much just not taking shots. And I think this UConn team really does need her to be a consistent scorer for them. So I appreciate that she was taking the shots, especially because she was wide open for a lot of them. I forget which quarter this was. I think it was the first quarter, but she had a gorgeous spin move along the baseline into a layup. I have confidence that her shot will start falling just with more reps. And similar things for AZ. She was 2 of 8 from the field in this game and 0 of 2 from 3. I definitely think it should be a priority of this UConn team to get her more looks. I don't think there's any scenario where you would want AZ Fudd only shooting twice from 3 in a game. I would also love to see AZ be a little more aggressive on offense in terms of looking for and creating her own shot, but she also did just have an off shooting night. Again, I'm not worried about it. She still finds ways to positively impact the game even if she's not scoring. AZ is really a hell of a defender. She moves so well on defense, and I think she does an excellent job of recovering on the player that she's defending and not giving them too much room. And I really enjoyed watching her grab the overhead pass that Creighton player threw out of midair. Those are always my favorite steals to witness. So for Caitlin and AZ, off shooting nights, but I still have a lot of confidence in them to show up for this UConn team. Jenna El-Alfi only played 9 minutes, which I just think is diabolical, especially because Creighton is a smaller team, so I kind of expected this to be a really strong matchup for her. She did miss 1 or 2 shots down low, and I would really like to see her start nailing those with more consistency, but she also only played 9 minutes. I really can't wrap my head around that. That's single digits. She did have one move in the first half where she caught the ball, I think at the top of the key, got a step on her defender, went right and drove all the way to the rim. She got fouled and didn't make the shot, but I'm glad to see Jana getting more confident at putting the ball on the floor, handling the ball, all of that. I would just like to see her play more than 9 minutes. Also in the front court, I thought Ice Brady had another positive showing. She definitely seems to be on a streak right now of positive performances, which I love to see. She nailed her classic long 2 from just inside the 3-point line. She pulled down the offensive rebound, passed it to Paige, who got it back to her for the long 2. I also thought she seemed to be playing pretty good defense. Granted, Creighton doesn't have a towering front court, but still it's really promising to see her get more comfortable in her spots. And I think that's pretty much it from this Creighton game. I can understand how it was a frustrating watch, especially if you were watching it live and didn't already have the context of the score like I did when I watched the replay. UConn definitely didn't play their best, and compared to the Seton Hall and Villanova games, there's a little bit of whiplash, but these games happen. It's what the season is. Creighton is definitely a strong opponent who match up well with this UConn team, and a lot of their strengths allow them to take advantage of what are key weaknesses for this UConn team. There are, of course, things for this UConn team to still work on, putting a positive spin on it. I do think it's important that even in a game where UConn only got significant offensive production from 2 players, and we're being defended well, and we're facing a Creighton team that can shoot and can score, they pulled out the win. And it was a close game at 11 points, but it never really felt close outside of the first quarter, so positives there. UConn will stay on the road to play DePaul on Wednesday. I'm hoping for good things, specifically a good shooting night and for them to pick back up their momentum. Thank you for watching as always, and let me know your thoughts and takeaways from this game. And that's what happened with the Huskies today, or yesterday. Till next time.